Hello everyone, welcome to a Voluminous Energy Changelog video. In this video we're going to be talking about some of the changes in Voluminous Energy 0.1.0.0, the first release in the 0.1 series. We're just going to go over some of the changes, some of the new stuff, and other things that you should be aware about in this new version of Voluminous Energy. So in this version, one of the big changes is that if you go into any tile entity, or at least most of them, if you click on the I/O button here, you can see that there is a bunch of options now. So you can see, like, it says input slot 0 up, so that's going to be this slot here, because this is the 0th slot. This is the first slot, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so you can bind each slot to different sides. So by default, this is up. This slot here, the bucket slot, is west. This one's down, north, south, east, west, etc. The checkboxes is just to disable it. So if you uncheck this, it means that you won't be able to input things into this slot anymore. If you check it, it will work. So if you want to adjust these, you might want to uncheck all of them and then just toggle through the menu until you get the side that you want. I will warn you that you should try to avoid having multiple capabilities on the same, or multiple slots or tanks bound to the same side of the tile entity, because if you do that, generally speaking, only the first one in the list would actually register for that side. That's just a limitation of how the system works right now. So make sure you only have one thing connected to each side. That might be a little bit frustrating for some of the more complex ones. I mean, the electrolyzer is pretty complex because there's basically 6 options here, but just keep that in mind. Obviously, the simpler ones, they have less options, obviously. Another change here, this is just a change, is the primitive Stirling generator. You now have the clear text here saying how much it's generating, so you don't always have to hover over the flame to see how much it's generating. If we put a solid fuel in here, you can see here easily from a glance, you can see how much it's generating. Although, the primitive Stirling generator will always give you 40. It's just nice that this text is here. So some of the other changes is improvements with the furnaces. So previously, if you did something in the furnace that took XP, so if I get, let's say, iron ore, and let's get some, I don't know, not dinitrogen, nitroglycerin, this one, and if I put that as our fuel and we run this, over time this will give us iron, and when we take that out, we'll actually get XP now. This is the same thing for the electric furnace. So if I go into game mode survival, you can see I get XP now. So this is something that was not really the case before. You get even more XP, but that works properly now with both the gas-fired furnace and the electric furnace. And the crusher now, works very similarly. So if we take one of the Voluminous Energy ores, and I need a power source, obviously. So yes, so let's grab some pet coke, I guess. Stick it in here. So if I grind up, let's say, bauxite ore. This is the case for other ores as well. When I collect the dust from the crusher, I should get XP as well now. Game mode survival, let's try that out. So you can see, I didn't actually get any XP there, but maybe there wasn't enough. But in theory, this should be working now. Oh, there we go. I guess it was a little bit delayed. But yeah, you should be getting XP now when you grind things up in the crusher. This also means that when you mine these ores, you don't get XP anymore from bauxite and the other Voluminous Energy ores. So if you can't. This is mainly to fix the exploit where if you mine the ore, right, you could replace it and get the XP again, right? Because you could just keep placing it and get more and more XP from this. But now, as you can see, this doesn't give XP anymore, so if I mine it, it has no effect. So you have to process it in the crusher to get XP now from bauxite, and the same applies to cinnabar, galena, and bauxite. Saltpeter is a little bit different because obviously, if you mine this with a shovel, right, you don't actually get the block. You get the saltpeter chunks, and so you still get the XP. But if you process saltpeter ore in here, saltpeter ore will still give you XP if you grab chunks out of the crusher. So, but if you process chunks, you should not be getting XP from processing the chunks to get saltpeter dust, right? Another change, actually, this is a great time to bring this up, is the catalysts now work, so you can actually see which machine is responsible for what type of recipe. So you can see the equalizer is responsible for equalizing. You can see that this works correctly now. This was something that was broken in the previous versions, and that has now been fixed. So that's pretty cool. Some of the other more minor changes is if we look at the distillation unit, when it's invalid, you can see this now appears on the top of the screen, multi-block invalid, and it tells you what you need to do. This was problematic before in the older implementation because it did not correctly, depending on your screen, it may have not correctly displayed on your screen. And also, obviously, in this update now, all this text is now translatable. So if you open up the ENUS JSON file and you create another JSON file for your language, you can actually translate the text now. So that was one of the bigger changes. It looks like there's a bug here with the upgrade slot, although that might just be because the distillation unit's not upgraded, so you don't see that icon yet. Yeah, I guess talking about upgrade slots, that's probably one of the bigger deals alongside I/O is upgrade slots, and it's a pretty big deal actually. It's really good for quality of life here. So it is nether gated, so you'll see you can craft 4 quartz multipliers, and you can have up to 4 of them in a stack, and that's kind of on purpose. So you can see here, I'm just going to grab this iron here, and if I put in a quartz multiplier, right, this will actually process a little bit faster. You'll notice that the ticks go down much faster, and so the more of these that you have, the faster the tile entity will process. You can see this is starting to get really fast now, right? 2 is very noticeable. When we go to 3, 3 is going to be even more noticeable, right? You can see this is nice and fast now, and when we start going to 4, that was really quickly, right? So 4 is really nice. There is a caveat, however. The more quartz multipliers that you have, the more fuel the tile entity is going to take. So if you look at this, you can see it's going down much faster than if we have 1. And so it's something that you need to consider when you are using the upgrade slots. But generally speaking, it is more efficient to actually run these faster since the operations are shorter, even though they take more energy per tick. The gain from the reduction of how many ticks it takes to process something offsets that. I've tested that, and that seems to be the case. So I wouldn't be too alarmed by this mechanic, but do know that like when you put 4 of these, it's basically, I believe it's something like 16 times the energy consumption. So you might want to keep that in mind. At the same time, 4 of these, that takes basically a second to process. So you need to do a cost-benefit analysis there. But basically, this should be worth it all around. It's just that in the instance that it's on, it draws more energy, so it may cause more strain on the grid. But the overall, if you have infinite power transfer, right, and you have a really big battery, it should not be draining. You should actually see less drain on your battery. It's just that it has a higher impact on your cabling if you're doing something involving electricity. So otherwise, so that's the upgrade slots. So I guess now we can talk about some of the new tile entities. Some of the new tile entities here includes the solar panels. This is a bug. I should have fixed this. It's pulling the wrong texture. I believe it's pulling the one for the Stirling generator, so that needs to be fixed. But so basically how the solar panels work is you craft them very similar to other Voluminous Energy tile entities. So in Voluminous Energy, the primitive ones, they're more iron based, so it's a block of iron and then some iron, and then you use lapis for to get the photovoltaic properties. And the actual solar panel actually requires photovoltaic dust, and it's more aluminum based. You need the carbon shielded aluminum machine frame, very similar to other ones. And so it's not too surprising there. The photovoltaic dust is just silicon, coal, and lapis, so it's still lapis based, so there's some use for lapis there. And you can see that this is actually pretty important if you're going to be upgrading from a previous version or try to upgrade from a previous version. You can now clear the NBT data on your tile entities, and you can do that by simply crafting them through the crafting table. So if you want to reset the NBT data, let's say you have like the centrifugal agitator, you have a little bit of fluid that's stuck in there and you don't have anywhere to put it, you can just run your centrifugal agitator with the NBT data through the crafting table, and you can clear that NBT data. This is also important if you're upgrading from a previous version, because the upgrade slot, this extra upgrade slot, this can cause the game to freak out when you're upgrading from a previous version, because it may think that the handler, the inventory handler, the item handler, may expect one less slot, so it'll see this as an extra slot, and it will throw an index out of range error, and it will crash the game. So basically, if you're lucky enough to load the save and not have that issue, you should not interact with the block. All you should do is mine it and then recraft it, and hopefully that'll fix the issue. Otherwise, you'll have to start a new save, unfortunately. So that's the only way you could really salvage an old save if you're upgrading to this version. You have to be careful with the index out of range caused by the extra upgrade slot. However, let's be honest here, I think the upgrade slot is a pretty good feature, and it's something that Voluminous Energy kind of needed to help speed up some of the tile entities for processing. So the solar panels, going back to these, so they generate 128 RF per tick, or FE per tick, for the upgraded one, for the standard one, and the primitive one is 64. Now obviously the primitive one, as you saw, requires lapis dust, so you will still need to start off with a Stirling generator and a crusher to get the lapis dust. But after that, you could focus instead on the primitive solar panels and use solar energy as your primary energy source if you wish. Obviously, there's a downside. So if you set time to like 1,000, there's a little bit of a reduction on the generation in the morning and in the evening. Time set night. So yeah, very little energy being generated at the nighttime. And if we do time set midnight, obviously you're not going to get anything. But noon, you get maximum generation. And this is just because there's a sinusoidal function calculating the multiplier for this. So the base value is 128, the base value for this is 64, and just depending on the position of the sun in the sky, the game will calculate how much of that should be given. So if it's 100%, for the majority of the day, should be pretty much 100%, and then in your evenings, in your sunsets, that's when you're going to start seeing a reduction. So, and obviously at nighttime you get nothing. So you need to keep that in mind, that solar, there is the drawback. It's not as amazing as some of the exotic fuels that you can do in a combustion generator. That's something to keep in mind. And also, yeah, it doesn't operate at night. So that's something you also need to consider. And I think one of the last interesting tile entities, and there's another bug here with the text, because when I was migrating everything to translatable text, I forgot that this needed an offset. So how this works is, this is based off of processing batteries. So in this version of Voluminous Energy, there's two new types of batteries. There's the mercury battery, and then there's the lead acid battery. And so the lead acid battery has less storage, but it has double the transfer. So you can transfer energy in and out of the battery faster than with a mercury battery, but the mercury battery has a higher capacity. So you can store more energy in the mercury battery, but you can't transfer as fast. It's half the speed. So how this works is basically you can toggle the mode of how batteries are handled. So in this mode, you can see the battery is discharging if you put it in the top slot. And if I flip it around, it'll charge from the battery box. And then when it's fully charged, it's thrown out at the bottom here. Same thing will happen in this mode. In this mode, the battery will be discharged, and then when it's completely discharged, then it will appear at the bottom. Right? I think, yeah, you can see that with a fully discharged battery. It just throws it straight to the bottom. So you can see that there's two modes, though, with the battery box. This mode here, it's hard to see because the text is over it, and that needs to be fixed. You can see there's a downward pointing arrow. What this means is, in this mode, the battery box is acting like most tile entities, where it's, instead of sending out power, it's receiving power. So if you hook this up to a generator of some sort or a solar panel, this will receive power instead of send out power. So this thing will charge from energy sources that you plug into it. If I click on this button, you can see it now has this like arrow pointing out. And what this does is, this won't charge anymore from generators, but this will instead act like a generator. So it'll actually send out energy. So if you have a cable running from this, or if you have something like a crusher or another tile entity that uses energy connected to this, you can run that as if it was a generator. So basically, the battery box, the purpose of the battery box is to allow you to charge and discharge batteries, and allow you to basically move that energy around in an item form by interacting with the batteries and interacting with the outside world. So you could have a system where you could have this at, let's say, one part of the base that receives fully charged batteries, dumps them into the actual energy pool that it has, and then sends out that energy to the tile entities at that remote location, and then it can send the dead batteries back to another location, where you could have it receiving the dead batteries, charging them, and then sending them back. So you can figure that out and try some techniques with manipulating the batteries like that. I think this will be useful if you want to transfer energy by items rather than, let's say, via like an energy duct or something like that. So maybe this is not useful. It depends on how you want to use this, but there might be a use case where you might find this useful to transfer energy by items, and you would obviously have this at each end of the transfer, so that you can charge the battery, discharge the battery, and send the power out, that kind of stuff. So it's interesting. It's there. So if you want to use it, you can use that. It's in this version of Luminous Energy. And other than that, I guess I'm going to take a look at the items real quick. I think we mostly covered all of the major changes in this version. There is quite a few bug fixes. There's bug fixes related to the Voluminous Energy Red Desert biome. There's a lot of bug fixes related to some of the tile entities. The Equalizer has had the most bugs, to be honest. The Equalizer should be running fine now, hopefully. So, and obviously there's still bugs that need to be squashed, so we'll work on that. But other than that, I hope you enjoy the new features, and I hope you enjoy Voluminous Energy as a whole. And yeah, hopefully this update's pretty good. Hopefully this update makes your life easier. And well, I guess I'll see you guys in the next video.